NCRP Productions presents the Fireside Chat Series. NCRP Productions welcomes you back to another Fireside Chat with me, Barry.
And Pedro.
So, Pedro, what's on the docket tonight?
So tonight, we're going to kind of follow up with our last, from our last Fireside Chat. So the last one, we kind of talked about the game world of Unhallowed Metropolis. Kind of went over, some little points on that. Tonight, what I wanted to focus on was our world specifically. So what we took the game world and our history, our world, and kind of, where we started and bring it to where we are today. Kind of give the listeners a little preview of what's the background of what's coming.
Boy, there's a lot. There's quite a few years of stuff in there.
It's a surprising amount. And the more that we've gone over it, the more I realize just how much we did.
Yeah. So I think we're going to have to split this into two parts. The first part being Dino's game, and then the second part being where I took over. To kind of let everyone know, when we started this, Dino had approached our group and said, "Hey, gang, I've got this great game." He sold it to us. We were in, and he started running it, and we had a great time. He finally came to a point where he was interested in stepping out, and we had talked earlier about me stepping in, and I stepped in and took over. So to start that, when Dino started the game, he started with us meeting. The group included myself. I was playing Aaron Peter Grayling the third. I am a noble. In addition to that, there was Krell, who was our Dompier. There was Raya, who was our mourner. Mm-hmm. There was Alistair, who was the detective with some psychic powers, and you.
And me, and the doctor. Yeah,
Dr. Desmond Wright. As time went on, we added more people. We can kind of hit those as we go. But that group is the group that started out. The first part for the game for us was going and figuring out the Grayling estate.
Yeah, that was the first big part.
So the beginning, if you remember, we had been called in to a rest home where an old servant of my family's was dying. And his last request was to speak to me. So I brought the group with me. A little more background real quick. Alistair is my not even half brother. He was my father's ward, so he was my brother by, I don't know how that works in litigation,
Yeah, I know. Now that you mention it, I don't know what you would call that.
Brother is the way we kind of talked about it, but I always made fun of the fact that he was the ward. In fact, as a noble, I really played up the fact that he was above everyone. I mean, he was, in his mind, better than all of you guys. There is a little bit of him bowing to Krell's superiority because, as a Dompier, Krell was well over 100 years old, had been working with the Grayling family for many, many years. And there was some deference between Grayling and you with Dr. Wright.
Yeah. I did, help deliver you. So
yeah, that was the big part of the story. Is you've known me since birth. You delivered me. So that was kind of a fun dynamic in the game. But we went to the convalescent home. He was dying. His last wish was to unburden his soul. He had stolen a lot of stuff from our home. He had kept it in a sewer and had told me how to get there, and then quietly, with the rest of the group not knowing this, had told me that there was something important there for me to go get. And so first thing for us was to figure out how to negotiate the sewers. And if you remember, we ended up at the meat market. Mm-hmm. And you remember what the meat market was?
Oh, yeah. Oh, it's just your average butcher shop up front. And then you go to the back for the special requests, for all those ghouls out there that like to partake in more, human variety meat.
Absolutely. The premium cuts was kind of the running joke for us. The game for Unhallowed has a class that I'm going to call subhuman. The ghouls are not fully human, but they're not fully undead, and their preference is human meat, although they can pretty much live off of anything. And so in the same way that historically you have the the resurrection men who would go and dig up corpses, generally fresh corpses, and deliver them to the anatomy classes so doctors could practice on them, suturing, dissecting, or just learning where things are. Pieces of those, or the resurrections, the full body from the resurrection men, would potentially end up at one of these human chop shops, which is the butcher. So we met a woman there, Peg, and she's going to become important, very important later in the game. But initially, Peg takes us into the sewers, takes us around a number of bad spaces that we run into, other ghouls. We met a couple in the butcher shop, and that couple had taken us into the sewer, and we ran into a rival gang of ghouls and ran for our lives. So Peg took us in a different way. When she got us into the area where we were going, Alistair was able to find a hidden latch that opened us up into a room. Mm-hmm. Inside the room, there were a number of stolen items. The servant had left a number of things there, quite a bit of silver with quite a bit of value. I was able to find the important piece, and what that was I found the trust deed for a mine that my family used to own. So a little history on me and the family. I am not the firstborn son, which historically gets everything. I am not the secondborn son or the thirdborn son, who normally get either a commission in the military purchased for them, or they get purchased a position in the Anglican Church. So I was going to have to make my way, and when my parents passed, it was going to be up to my oldest brother to make certain that I got a stipend I would enjoy, and as soon as my parents were gone, that stipend could be taken away. So immediately for me, I started looking at ways to safeguard my income and my lifestyle the way I want it. So when I found that deed, I realized quickly that if I could secure it and get control of that mine strictly on my own, that I might have an income. And the story for Unhallowed is, as the zombies attacked, as the animates attacked, and when they pulled farther and farther back into London, a lot of the mining areas, a lot of the food areas, a lot of the industrial areas got taken over. As they went back out and started recapturing them, London proper, England in total, took over all those mines. Everything. England took over everything. Slowly but surely, the nobility has been getting rights back to them. At this point, it's been the best it's ever been. It's not that great, but it's been the best it's ever been, and so it was a great way for me to look at getting money. So we had to go to the Grayling estate. And if you remember, we got there was a whole bunch of strange stuff going on.
Oh, it was eerie to say the least, and we stuck our noses into everything.
Everything. If you remember, when we pulled up, what was described to us was a number of piles of dead bodies that were set to be burned on the front area. As we started to delve farther and farther into what was going on, we realized there was something sinister. Now, this is all perceptual. Remember that this game is set 200 years in the future of the Victorian age, where the Victorian sensibilities never went away. So in today's world, that's the reason we have the warning at the front. There's a whole lot of bad things happen. We find out that an innocent is being sacrificed once every 7 years. And that innocent specifically had to be loved. So generally it was a small child, and it was a loved small child. And we didn't know this till the end. We found out later what the actual deal was, but my father was complicit, along with a number of elders in the town were complicit in this deal, and they would take a small child, they would sacrifice it to what ended up being a zombie lord, which is something in Unhallowed, that can control the animates around. And that zombie lord turns out to be a couple of greats going back, my aunt.
That's right. Yep.
And so the short of it is we got there, we realized something weird was going on. We had a number of side things, including finding out that I had a son that I didn't know about, because anytime I went to the estate, there were a number of women in town I had dalliances with, and apparently one of them popped a baby. When the group finds out that this is going on, specifically Alistair and Raya have a horrible, horrible time with it. And I don't know if you remember what happened with that, with Krell and him.
Yeah. In the building with the statue.
No. What I'm specifically speaking of is Alistair had figured out that Krell was a Dhampir. So the history is Krell is a Dhampir. I know that he is Dhampir. I may be one of the only people besides my father and my mother who know that he's a Dhampir. When I moved out of my home, he moved into my basement, which sounds really creepy, but I have a really nice basement. Krell's place was decked out. But Alistair had found out that Krell was Dhampir, and he used it as a threat to force Krell to come with him. They went into town, where Alistair was going to confront each and every member of the elders.
That's where the statue comes in.
Oh my God. And so he goes to the first home. Inside the home, there's the mother and child. He tells the mother and child, you need to step out. They stepped out, if I remember correctly, with Raya was the other one there. And then while they're in there, Alistair says to the man, we know that you're killing innocent children. And the man says, yes, everyone knows that. It safeguards the countryside for miles. Basically, the death of one innocent child safeguards for 7 years 1,000 people or more. It seems like a good deal. And Alistair says something to the effect of, but there's no innocent child deserves to die. He looks at Krell and he says, kill him. And Krell looks at Alistair and says, do it yourself, and walks out. At which point, do you remember this? Alistair
sure tries to do it himself.
Alistair takes out his knife.
Oh my God.
Fails on his roll and ends up having to saw through the man's neck, spraying blood everywhere, finally killing him. Outside, the mother and child are rushing to go back in. They can hear the man gurgling on his blood, his dying breath, and Krell tells them, stay out. It's going to be better for if you do. Alistair comes out covered in the man's blood and says to the woman and the child, it's going to be better this way. Have a nice day. This is where we went. This is why the warning is on everything. This isn't even half of what happens, but
I'd like to say we're the heroes of this world. But heroes is a very loose definition.
For what we did, it sure was. Same point as all this is going on, we have the zombie lord down in the sewers under the whole area, under all of, and I've forgotten where the estate itself is, but under the estate, we have a collection of sewers that lead to a...
it's a cavern, right?
Yeah, they led to that cavern, which is basically...
I still have the drawing on my sheet.
Oh, that's awesome. It leads to the cavern where they do the sacrifices, and Raya gets in there. She gets a wild hair and decides, and again, Raya is a mourner. Kind of is her taking that she's going to put down animates. Her job, a mourner's job, is the poor, we just burn their bodies when they fall. The rich have the belief in the Anglican Church that the body must be whole to be raised when Christ comes back to the earth. So their desire is to bury a whole body. But many people animate, and they become zombies. So her job is to sit, hired by the nobility, to sit with the dead person, and if it doesn't raise within 3 days, it won't raise. But during that time, she sits there, and if it does come to life, she's been trained to behead it in one shot, leaving the body as little disturbed as possible. So she finds out about the zombie lord, again, I think it's Two Greats' aunt, and she goes in, unbeknownst to all of us, and kills it.
Mm-hmm.
At which point starts to release upon our area, starts to release a lot of the animates who start coming in and now have threatened these 1,000 people in the town and the surrounding areas. I'll tell you, we are going to try and do a couple of from the Journals of Aaron Peter Grayling. We'll have those as lead-in, so you get a bigger part of this story, at least a little deeper explanation of the story. But when this ends, we have the zombie lord. The head is brought into the Grayling estate. She is set up with the two housekeepers. That head is set up alive. It's with the two housekeepers to be given access to the library, to be fed not innocent people, but recently dead flesh. And we leave the estate. And in the process, real quick, that's where my family's mine is. And I go look at it with Krell. And when I get back, my next step is to try and get control of the mine. I go to a solicitor, a lawyer. I have paperwork drawn up. I'm getting set to have that put in my name exclusively. And then I have to start working on getting the paperwork to have the government buy what we mine out of the mine. So from there, we come back from the Grayling estate, and we meet a new character. And that's when we bring in Frankie.
Yeah, we bring in Frankie. Yep.
And do you remember the background for how Frankie came in?
Frankie is somebody who the doctor, Dr. Wright, has called upon to help kind of be a reanimation man almost, find body parts, specifically. He doesn't tell Frankie what it's for necessarily, but it's for the doctor's obsession of trying to recreate his dead wife.
Yep.
And so Frankie comes in, and Frankie's a good help.
The doctor has a big background to the character, and I think we did cover it in the first of the Unhallowed Fireside podcast.
Want to say we did
Fireside chats.
Yeah.
But suffice it to say, those parts are definitely needed on a regular basis.
On a very regular basis.
So Frankie at that point comes in and joins us and offers the group a chance to go on a thrope hunt. So in the Unhallowed world, the thropes are effectively the werewolves. They're not exactly. Thropes were an experimentation. We were trying to find a way to either combat the animates or stop the animates completely. And a la Captain America, a super soldier type serum is made that gives these people incredible powers. Thrope serum. And the true Thrope serum, the original serum, which was lost to humanity, allows these people to gain great abilities. When you talk about it, it sounds like a werewolf, but really it's more the Jekyll and Hyde. The idea was when they needed to, they would turn into this powerful creature a la Hyde. They would then be able to battle the animals, destroy them, and change back into normal people. And because of the serum, because of the disease that's within them that gives them that power, in return, they cannot be turned into animates. If they die, they die, but they're very powerful creatures. And that initial group of thropes and that thrope serum is something that plays throughout the game. In fact, later in our game, in the game when I run, that'll come back again. You'll learn more about the thropes there.
In a big way.
Absolutely. So we go on a hunt for the thropes. We end up meeting a number of men from America who are thropes. More importantly, we get Frankie to join us in the group. And that takes us then to the Zeppelin ride. Mm-hmm. So on the Zeppelin ride, we had met Arthur Billings and his wife Mei Ling, and Billings had been working on refurbishing a number of Zeppelins, 6 Zeppelins he was purchasing from the Prussian Empire. In return for those purchases, a number of things were going to happen, which we don't have to go into, but his idea was to start having effectively an air traffic to and from Prussia, London, and other places. Before that, pretty much, and the game doesn't go into a lot, but pretty much before that, we had envisioned that it was going to be pretty much just military that would be using the Zeppelins. Mm-hmm. And the Prussians have maintained control of Prussia via air superiority, where London has done it through incredible work with galvanics and other weapons. The Prussians did it with airships. And so Billings, to get this off the ground, to get this to where wealthy people would pay him to be able to travel to and fro, he needed to have somebody, some nobility that was backing it. And of course, we're back to Aaron and money. So Aaron says, I'm in. And so we take a boat ride over to Prussia. We get to Berlin.
That's right. Yeah, we started on the boat.
Yep, we start on the
right.
boat, get into Berlin, and then we take the Zeppelin ride. And if you remember, I'm going to let you take over on that Zeppelin ride because there's quite a bit of you in that one. Desmond had a couple of interesting things go on with it.
He really did. So let me see here. I'm going to try and piece it all together the best way I know how. Yeah, so if I remember right, on the Zeppelin, his big thing was the anarchists that they found out. They found out that there was anarchists on there, and I remember the doctor, and I remember being really curious because there was a few discrepancies. Like there was something up with the cook, I remember.
Yep.
Some of the work hands were a little suspicious, and I remember the doctor being really inquisitive about it. And what is it? Grayling's brother. I'm sorry, I'm always
Alistair.
Alistair. Yeah, he had Alistair tag along to pretty much do all the heavy lifting for it.
Right.
Oh man, yeah. So we end up uncovering while in the rafters that there was an anarchist plot. And at which point, I believe a knife fight ensued.
It does with our 50-year-old doctor.
Yeah, with the 50-year-old doctor, as well as this anarchist, and I think there was a couple animates there too.
We had found out that in the upper area, so the way the Zeppelin was laid out, the actual bag above, which I believe we were using helium and not hydrogen.
Helium, yeah.
But because of the way it was set, people were going in there without gas masks. You basically suffocate. It's an inert gas. You're done. And a number of people, the anarchists, had stashed up there. They had died. They had animated. That fight ensues, and
so then we have to deal with the anarchist and the animates, and we did end up taking down the anarchist, but not before we find out they had sabotaged the engine of the Zeppelin, which then we tried to repair, but could not. Irreparable, and we end up coming in for a very controlled crash. That's what I'm going to call it. It was not. It was pretty bad.
It was bad, but everybody thankfully survived.
We survived. And another key part that comes into play later is I took the anarchist knife and I keep it with me, and I like to throw that sucker sometimes.
That's right. You actually have it in the current game.
Still have it, and I took one level of throwing just for those with lucky shots, so that on the because if I remember right, I did that as a joke once. I just threw it, got like a headshot, killed somebody, and then I was like, you know what? This is hilarious. So I had the anarchist blade just to throw around at some point, in case my gun doesn't do it.
One of the things that I've got to bring up, real important, because as I'm going through here, I'm remembering all the different people. We meet Evelyn.
Yes, Evelyn was a big part too.
We meet her in Prussia.
So Evelyn is somebody who is studying the parapsychology.
Right.
She's actually getting her doctorate. Wrote a whole thesis on it. My character still has an active copy of it, but she is a psychic within the world and studies it. And she's important because we've come back to her several times for questions, as well as she has also given us some pretty ominous predictions for our future.
Yep.
That I still look at my character sheet and think, when's this coming in? And I'm not going to like it.
Right. Well, and the warning is that was when Dino was running, and sadly we have lost Dino from the real world, and so you may never get it back, or you may get it back.
That's right. Okay.
So, and I've just looked through my notes real quick. We are using helium in the game as far as the power for the balloons. Research is one of the big parts of this game for me, and so we were able to find out that helium can be produced from natural gas. So that's what the Prussians are doing, and England can do it as well. So
I would guarantee if this was a hydrogen balloon, we would have blown it up within one session.
that's true.
That would have been the TPK right there.
So when we crash, we end up crashing very close to Norwich, which even I was not really aware of the geography of England, but Norwich is on the far eastern side. It's cold, it's wet, it's probably worse in today's world. But we start making our way on foot to London, and if you want to see how terrible of a walk that is, grab a map, because it...
it was a rough in-game one. Didn't we came the big thing that we came across before we actually made it back was the monastery, right?
Right.
Yeah.
We met Brian, if I remember correctly, at the
And
monastery.
something was very wrong at the monastery, which we took upon ourselves to try and figure out. I'm drawing a blank exactly what, but I know we killed people.
We pretty much everywhere we went, we killed people.
That could sum up a lot of it. I'm sure they deserved it, is a key point. But I do very clearly remember after that, I believe we took another boat ride on a river after that.
We most of our way back to back to London from Norwich was done by river.
And I think that's because we took their boat from Monastery. Yeah.
Yep, because we're good people.
We are. You know, they were monsters. You don't need to know what they were doing. Just know they were monsters.
This is very, very true.
But hey, I got mine. I still look at it every time I see my character sheet, my scars. I remember taking 2 arrows, which is some of, like, the very minimal damage. And no, I'm not going to knock on wood because, you know, he probably deserves it by this point. The Doctor has taken very minimal damage throughout the campaign. You know, that's why he has all these people around him. He plays it smart. But the ones he has the scars written down. And I took 2 arrows that day. I shot a lot of people in the head, too. So, you know, you might claim I deserve it, but they shot first.
Right. And you shoot them in the head because you don't want them coming back as inanimate.
It's the right thing to do as a doctor. Yes. I don't want anything to harm anybody in the world, so me and my gun, the Hippocratic Oath, you know, put them down.
Exactly. So that, once we get back to London, that kind of closed out Dino's game, and I took over from there. But there are a couple of different... There are a couple of different things that we missed that are going to be important once my game starts up. So, one, we found a substation, a connection to the subway that seemed to have been pulled off bit by bit. The areas in London, the subways have been closed out to, one, stop the ghouls from having easy access to areas under London to get up, I guess I should say. Additionally, the trains has stopped running in many of those areas, so they've been closed off for that. This particular substation was in a perfect portion of the city to where Aaron was going to be able to use it as some kind of a storage, secret base, that kind of thing. I just basically ran Aaron as this kind of crazy evil genius mastermind trying to get all the pieces together so that when family died, I would be in a better position than any of my brothers. Additionally, when we went into the sewers where we met Peg, the other thing that we found was Frank.
One of my favorite things we found was Frank. And yeah, if you didn't mention it, I was sure to mention it. Frank is one of my favorite running bits that we found in that subway.
Absolutely. He is a different style of automaton. So in the game, there are creatures that have been reanimated Frankenstein style, and generally they're pieced together body parts, and they have whatever level of life you kind of want to put into them. Dino had designed Frank as something different. There are a number of things of which I'm not going to bring them up in the show here because actually Pedro doesn't know all of them yet. Dino did tell me once I took over, but Frank is special. As automatons go, he is something different. And we have a number of people that would never accept Frank. If Frankie, who is your resurrection man and also is a monster hunter, ever found out about Frankie, he would destroy him.
Yes.
Raya, who is a mourner who detests the unlife, also would destroy him.
Yes.
So when we took Frank out of the sewers, we quietly did not tell Alistair, who was starting to become more and more connected to Raya, as I'll get to that one in a sec. But we made sure Alistair and Raya didn't know about it, and you and myself and Krell got Frank into your crazy Mobius strip style home where I know that you have downstairs, you have your house, and then upstairs you have your living space, and then upstairs in the attic you have a giant, unbelievably huge lab, which is secretly hidden downstairs and upstairs and around a corner. And
it's ridiculous. It changed all the time.
Yep,
even as you were
time.
saying that, I was like, I thought it was in the basement.
Right. Nope.
But it is. It's both in the basement and upstairs. With far more Jacob's ladders than any person needs nor knows what to do with, but they're there for a reason, I assure you. Everything from the giant ones all the way to pocket ones.
If you're listening to this, you're getting an insight to the Jacob's ladder jokes that will start coming throughout, because you'll
hear them.
Dr. Wright is well known for anything instead of the Frankenstein more power, it's more Jacob's ladders.
Yeah, it's more Jacob's ladders. And so Frank was great for me because I had found a possible bodyguard there as well. Frankie kind of acts as a bodyguard to me because I make him essentially. But Frank I saw and I was like, what could I do with Frank? So I remember spending a good chunk of a session just running ideas back and forth of like, well, I test this, and slowly started to realize that something I thought was, your basic automaton, something really simple, could follow basic commands.
Right.
Could learn a lot more, was a lot more quick on the uptake, was a lot more special. And luckily, we are able to he has a kill switch, so to speak. We can turn him on and off, set him to recharge. As we left and where we are currently, I'm pretty sure I had turned him off.
That's the hope. When you're thinking, did I leave the stove on? Did I leave Frank on?
Did I leave Frank active? And we'll find out when we get back.
Yes, you will.
But I remember even going so far as to commission a specially made tailored suit for Frank.
That's true. And shoes.
Yes. The shopkeep was very interested in why I had this giant suit being made, but that's none of his concern.
And size 36 shoes.
None of his concern. And so I am excited once we eventually get back to maybe see if that comes to fruition.
Exactly.
I don't know what more can come of Frank, but yeah, it's fun doing little in-game flashbacks to what we think Frank might be doing.
This is true. So one other slight one that you got to know is the background with Peg. So Peg we found at the butcher shop. She was kind of a street urchin, somewhere in the indescribed, 18 to 21 years of age. And my character, Grayling, took a huge like to her as soon as we washed her and cleaned her up. It's so much so that he actually spends a large portion of his monthly stipend on getting her etiquette lessons, purchasing her new clothes, getting her combat training. And there's a reason that we do this when we start my game, but I just want you to understand that as we go forward, Grayling has decided that Peg is going to be his wife when he takes one, and he needs to have her be fully engaged in society. And I don't know how much the rest of you guys know that, but I'm giving you a little piece here, and you, the listeners, are getting it as well. This is his plan. Once he's got her engaged well enough with society, he intends to marry her. I really actually don't know how Peg felt about it. I think we may have a group consensus to decide that. So when we end there, when we're all back, that's when my game starts. And I think we'll come back in another Fireside Chat and run over my game for you. But I'll run you through what we've got. We have Raya, the mourner. We have Alistair, the detective psychic. We have Dr. Desmond Wright, the doctor. And by the way, he's generally a family practitioner. The other things are something separate. Family practitioner and a surgeon. Mm-hmm. We have Krell, who is the Dompier. We have Aaron Peter Grayling, the noble for the group. And we have Frankie, who is the monster hunter. Actually, they're called not executioners. They are called undertakers.
Undertakers, okay. That I knew it was right there.
Right. We have Peg, who has been brought into Grayling's home. We also have 2 children that were brought into Alistair's home by the group, and I think that is everything. And Frank. So
And Frank.
we'll close it off here, I guess, at this point, and we'll leave you to kind of mull over this, and we will come back with my game and where we're at right before we start the new game.
Oh, man. And there's a lot of exciting stuff coming for that
Pedro, anything that you can remember that I've missed?
For the first part, I mean, you pretty much covered all the big stuff. Of course, there's probably a ton of little minutia that we can go through, but I mean, I think that's most of the big stuff from Dino's part of the game. It really laid the groundwork for all of our characters.
It
and like
really did.
the craziness that we're gonna go on, and boy, when you hear the next one, you're gonna see we did some things.
It gets worse.
It gets worse.
If you're semi disgusted with the things that we did or the things that we allowed, wait till the next one.
Yeah, we affect the world greatly. That's a good way of putting it.
I think it's a great statement
Yes.
to end on. So, Pedro, thanks for joining me tonight.
Thank you, Barry. We'll talk to y'all next time.
Thank you for listening to another NCRP Productions podcast. We value your support and would love to have you like us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram and Twitter, and subscribe to our YouTube channel, all at NCRP Productions. You can also find our podcasts on Anchor, Spotify, or wherever great podcasts are found. We value your thoughts, so please don't hesitate to leave feedback and comments. And if you want to reach any of us directly, we are available at ncrpproductions@gmail.com.